Welcome to Healthy Dose. Learn to repair damage, replace key hormones, and regenerate your body. Get ready to take back control and reclaim your life. Now's the time. Here's your Healthy Dose.
Dr. Joe and Dr. Buzz, welcome back to Healthy Dose. Today we got a great topic. I was reading an article earlier in the week that specifically spoke about older millennials, and what they said was nearly half of older millennials have at least one chronic health condition such as depression, high blood pressure, or asthma by the time they reach the age of 40. And I think it coincides with some of the things that we've been speaking about as it related to corona, the complications of corona, the comorbidities that made people more susceptible, even the people that are carrying the symptoms for a long period of time called long haulers. New stats came out from the CDC, and they spoke about, to the point of this article, that all the people that we lost due to coronavirus, still the death rate that trumps that is heart disease and cancer. So those diseases are still out there, right, Buzz? And the neglect that people had in terms of dealing with those conditions because of either lack of care, lack of intervention, poor diets, being enclosed in their home with the social distancing, lower levels of vitamin D, gut health has suffered tremendously. I think that's probably some of the background information as to why these numbers are continuing to rise. You had mentioned earlier, just we have an amazing guest today to talk about some of the products that we use. In fact, the product that we use for gut health in the office. But you had an experience several years ago being a workout fanatic, a weightlifter, that just with gut health and kind of how it changed your life going forward and how you brought it out into your practice. Tell us just a teeny bit about that, and then we'll bring our guest in today.
Yeah, I think we came upon this microbiome product, the spore-based probiotic. We were at a seminar. I think we were at a hormone seminar, part of our diplomate program, and we came upon it. And I wanted to give it a shot because, what the person there made a lot of sense, basically saying, 'cause I always took probiotics and a bunch of vitamins, and they were explaining that basically the probiotics we were taking, if they're not spore-based, there's no way they're going to survive to the small intestine. And that makes a lot of sense to me. So I tried the product out, and I would say there's a lot of vitamins I take. I don't notice any difference. There's very few supplements that I take that I can say, hey, man, I take that thing, I really notice a difference. So I took a bottle of it as directed, and I noticed an immediate change in my gut health. I've worked out my whole life, ate a lot of protein. I would say I was kind of gassy. You'd probably agree with that. You went to school with me. I had my whole life, but I was sure that just eating a bunch of protein and stuff like that. And I'd also always been, I'd heard this thing that, every time you eat, you're supposed to go to the bathroom, 30, 40 minutes afterwards. And that wasn't me. I was probably more traditional. I was never bound up, but I would say, like once a day in the morning, whatever. And I'm not trying to get too much detail, but you get it. I took this product and since that time I have no gas, haven't for years now. And my diet hasn't changed. So it's not like I changed my diet. And, pretty much if I eat food like a meal, I'm going to go to the bathroom within a half hour to an hour afterwards, and pretty uneventful. So right away, I knew that was a thing. And another byproduct of this is I would get the flu once a winter, every winter, pretty much like clockwork. And I also suffered with a lot of nasal, my nose was running all the time. And since this, I really don't get runny noses like I used to. I get sinus infections every winter. They'd last for a long time. I have a deviated septum. Haven't had that issue. Haven't been sick in years now. And I even had COVID this year. And the only reason I knew it, I lost my sense of taste, but I never even got sick from COVID. So, and I really attribute a lot of this to fixing the microbiome. And I think a lot of people don't realize how important your microbiome and your gut health is. So, and I think this product is essential to restoring that for a lot of people that have issues. So I'm excited to talk about it today. And I just know my own personal life. And since this time, I give it to any patient we put on weight loss or any patient that comes to our office that has a lot of just whole body inflammation. We prescribe it to every single person. It's, in my mind, it's mandatory.
And we're really happy to welcome Tim Brouder, who's been working for Microbiome Labs. Specifically, that's the products that we're talking about today, for 3.5 years. Welcome, Tim. It's going to be an interesting conversation because Tim has background on both sides. He's actually worked with big pharma, so he knows the mechanism and he has respect for drug intervention with certain types of conditions. But he also understands the benefits of the body's ability to self-heal when it's in the right condition. He actually came to know the product because he started using it for his own autoimmune condition, rheumatoid arthritis, and we'll touch on that and go through that. But it worked so well that he began working for the company. So I wanted to welcome Tim to the show.
It's great to be here. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Buzz, I was going to mention to Tim, our audience, we've spoken in depth about vitamin D3, fish oil, CoQ10, some of the basics, multivitamin if you're going to be starting on a health and wellness program, especially when we've all been so immune compromised with COVID, being inside, not being exposed to some of the things that keep us healthy. There's a term called leaky gut. I mean, it's a good segue to open and kind of give you the floor. But leaky gut, just to give our patients an analogy, imagine you own this beautiful mansion. You have the nicest furniture, the best of the best in the house, best electronic equipment, but you have a leaky roof. And all of a sudden, slowly but surely, you start to build up mold and mildew in the house, and before long, the house has to be totaled. Very similar type of a thing with a leaky gut, right? It's when food molecules start to pass into the body, and wherever they land, they start to cause symptomatology. And with that, I want to give you the floor to talk a little bit about your rheumatoid arthritis and what this product did and what it's meant to you and why you want to bring it out to the masses.
Absolutely. Well, I'm extremely passionate about this because I was one of those people, like I think a vast majority of the people in the country are. I was a non-believer. I started having issues with my ankles at about 40 years old, and it was devastating. It hurt so bad I thought I had a broken foot. When I went to the urgent care, they were like, no, you have arthritis. And they started asking me very standard questions. Have you broken your ankle before? Have you had ankle problems? Have you had foot problems? It was a no on all of these. And then they started asking me about my career. My previous career before pharma and this was in the restaurant business. So I was on my feet, 11, 12 hours a day, and that's what they attributed it to. They said, you've worn yourself out. Okay, no problem. So I went to a specialist. I got on some heavy medications. They talked a little bit about diet change, but not much else. They just said, this is something that you're gonna have to deal with. And it was not going well. I had since left the restaurant business. My attacks were bad enough that I was on the high end of the spectrum. I would have what's called RA fatigue. When I would get these attacks, I would actually have to go out to my car at lunchtime and sleep in my car for an hour. I would get low-grade fever, and it was to a point where I was in my mid-40s, and about every 6 weeks when I would get an attack, I would walk with a cane. And wow. That's just from, probably 5 or 6 years before that, I was still playing full field soccer and full court basketball. And then I came to a point where I was worried I wouldn't even be able to teach my son how to play games. So it was devastating for me. And as the time went on, it was getting worse. It was not getting better. So then it was recommended to me that I take a different drug, and it happened to be a drug that I was selling at the time. And it was one that kind of hampers your immune system. I'm not going to say a drug by name, obviously. And
I'll just say, Tim, without naming the drug, it is a drug it's a chemotherapy drug, and it's used frontline in addressing some of these conditions.
Right.
And it's whether it's used off label. There's a lot of drugs that we speak about, even when we're talking about neuropathic pain and conditions that are used off label to treat those. We've spoken about those in the past. So did you take that? Did you have an experience that you at least started that protocol?
Well, I started the first one, and they wanted to put me on one that was even worse. And because that one wasn't being very effective, it was still progressing. And the capper came for me when it was only in my ankles. I got an attack in my wrist, and it lasted 3 months. And for about 6 weeks, I couldn't close my hand. It looked like my hand was broken. Couldn't hold my toothbrush, couldn't start my car. And I just said, I can't live like this. If this gets worse, I'm in trouble. I won't be able to function. So I reached out to someone I knew at Microbiome Labs. They had recommended this probiotic for me for a long time. I had fought it and said, well, this is crazy. But once I went and heard the talk, kind of like you guys did at A4M, and I realized this is not what I think it is. And I tried it along with the medication. And for me, it took a little while. After about 2 months, I started noticing a difference. but kind of cutting to the end, it's been over 3.5 years. I'm completely pharma free. And if I get an attack now, instead of, 3 weeks, it lasts a day.
Yeah.
I've had one bad attack in 3.5 years. And that was, again, autoimmune's a very strange thing for people out there who have not experienced it, or you're not sure if you're having it. It can be caused by several different factors. The last time I got an attack was fairly recently, and it was a very unpleasant surprise, because usually what I've heard triggers it: stress, obviously antibiotics if you're taking it, which I haven't taken, bad food, which I don't eat fast food or anything anymore. I used to.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's a combination isn't it a combination of the fats and the carbohydrates that tend to cause that leaky gut?
It can be, but there's several different factors. I mean, your stress level can do it. If you're constantly stressed, if you're taking antibiotics and 1.675 amoxicillin kills 90% of your microbiome, and then if you get overgrowth after that, the gram-negative bacteria can lead to heightened levels of LPS, and all these different factors do it to you. Lack of sleep. Unfortunately, I wish you could say for most people it's one thing or another, but it seems to be a combination. And it's very similar to I guess anything. One thing that does it to me may not do it to you, but we've seen some common threads. But I had an attack recently when I had very, very good news, and I didn't realize that could do it. My brother's been very ill, and we got very good news about his illness. The next day, I got an attack which I've never had before in my knee. My knee ballooned up like a grapefruit. And I started calling the docs I knew, trying to figure out what was going on, and they're all like, yeah, you can get that from a change of stress level, even if it's good news. And personally, I don't think that's fair, but what are you going to do?
To your point, Tim, the fact that you're mentioning that you had a flare-up and it's not a persistent chronic condition like so many of these people that have these arthritic type or autoimmune conditions, is that would be life-changing to people, just to be able to get a day or two when they've been dealing with these types of conditions of relief, for day in, day out, month in, month out, year after year. So there is hope there, and it's not something that's far-reaching. This is not something, for example, when we talk about weight loss and cardiovascular health, that you have to physically implement a strategy to improve yourself, physically do something. This is, if you could be disciplined enough to follow a protocol, take some supplements, and gradually start to modify and change the diet, you will achieve amazing results with this product.
I absolutely. Now, again, this is not going to be for everyone. We have great success at this. Some people need to modify and do 2 or 3 things, or immediately change the diet, or things like that. But what I always tell everybody, in dealing now 3.5 years, seeing every autoimmune issue people can have, the one common thread with autoimmune is life interruption. Any of these things you get are really keeping you. The funny thing for me, when you're healthy, the things you want are so different than when your health is affected. And everyone can trust me on this. If you have a little bit of psoriasis right now, immediately try to take care of it, because that's how it started for me. And it seems to cascade into different things.
Just to be clear for the people listening, so autoimmune disease is a disease where the body's attacking itself, correct?
Yes.
And then typical medicine, the way they would treat our pharmacology would be to decrease the strength of the immune system, or to turn the immune system down. Is that correct?
Correct.
But the problem with that is it also would make you more susceptible to potentially other things that immune system could be preventing.
And when you get these, absolutely true. And from what we've seen, when you get these issues like this, if you get the really bad one, something like Crohn's and colitis, it seems one thing will work for a certain amount of time, and then they have to change it up. And unfortunately, with one being as bad as that, a friend of mine actually has it, and now he's gotten twice where they've had to remove part of his intestine because the inflammation has gotten so bad. And eventually, you run out of stuff to remove. And so,
I think, Joe and I specialize in treating pain, and pain is inflammation. And a lot of inflammatory conditions, although maybe not directly caused by it, are definitely aggravated by this leaky gut, and basically like in a chronic inflammatory state. I mean, Joe, you see it, and we see it in our practice. There's sometimes people they come in for knee pain, but then you're doing their history, and their shoulders hurt, their neck hurt. You just touch them, they're in pain. Their whole body's in inflammation. And not only does that make life miserable and makes it hard for exercise, inflammation leads to lots of other, can lead to heart disease, lead to lots of other things. So anything you can do to turn down the volume on inflammation in the body is not going to help you feel better. It's going to help you live longer. I don't even think that's debatable.
Yeah, it's a frontline, to your point, Buzz. It's a frontline treatment for our medical weight loss program, for our chronic conditions where people are suffering with pain. Specifically, we do a lot of work to balance hormones, and we do very detailed blood work, Tim. And that's where some of these conditions become evident to us, that patients aren't even aware that they had these things. People struggle with weight loss, and of course we want to look at what are their cholesterol levels, their insulin levels, what's their hemoglobin A1C, are they able to tolerate fats, and does their system work? And we'll uncover that they have Hashimoto's disease, and these antibody levels are so high that probably large portions of the thyroid have been eaten away already. So more information is always good. Diagnostics are important. Lab work is very important. And again, this is something that you can implement into the diet even as you're waiting to get lab work. I think to the audience, we should really explain what leaky gut is. We've kind of discussed some of the symptomatology that can result from it, whether it's actual diseases to the gut itself, like Crohn's and colitis, or to the thyroid, like Hashimoto's or joint pain. But what leaky gut is, it's a portion of a vital organ in the body, right? It's the large intestine that becomes perforated. And to give another example, if they're doing a surgical procedure, and this was very common back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, where people had an appendicitis and the appendix would burst. When you start to get infection that leaks out of an organ into the peritoneal cavity, it's a life. It's critical. People died from that, and they would have massive scars on the right side of their abdomen. But over a slower period of time, when you're having these same toxins leak out into the body, ultimately the end result could be the same. It's just going to take you a lot longer to get there, and you're suffering poor health, disease, inflammation, loss of quality of life, that affects not only you but your loved ones.
Yes, yeah, and there's and when you have the bad bacteria, what's getting in your system is something called lipopolysaccharides, or LPS for short, and that's a huge inflammatory marker. And when you have that combination of bad bacteria and the leaky gut, which they kind of go hand in hand, one helps cause the other. We have seen that, and unfortunately, we don't know what it's going to do to you. For me, I was a fast food and soda junkie all those years in the restaurant business. And one of the ways we test LPS levels is we give people a fast food 2,000 calorie breakfast. And we do blood work as well, which is very different than a lot of the supplement companies. And one of the things that we've seen is this affects you so badly that at about the 5-hour mark, the LPS level in your blood spikes because you have so much bad bacteria dying off, because there's such a rush of these things eating and reproducing and dying off, that you get these spikes in LPS levels. And again, the more you do this to yourself, the worse it's going to get. Mm-hmm. When we did our first clinical trial, our LPS study with college students, we found taking Megaspore not only decreased it in a month by 45%, the people who didn't take it, theirs was up an average of 15%. So in 1 week, 1 month, just by doing nothing, it had jumped that high. So imagine that over a period of years. You're going to have health issues from this. And again, the thing that for those of you out there who are listening to this and have a few issues or think you may be doing something like this, just like you talked about the thyroid being eaten away, with rheumatoid, I hadn't taken care of it. It hit my wrist for 3 months, and now I believe I have permanent damage to that joint because the attack was so ferocious. It hurts when I do certain things. I don't get attacks, but there's something wrong. And I don't want to see anybody go through that. Not what I've gone through. If you can prevent it, that's just the main thing, preventative.
There's people. One of the big keys for us, Tim, too, even in our weight loss program, people who have lost weight, but they say they can't get rid of the pouch from the belly button down. That lower abdominal distension is one of the signs also, right, that there's potentially toxicity of the gut, that you're retaining water. And that's been a very successful outcome, too. When people start getting gut health, they start to rapidly lose water and weight, so the body swelling comes down. And when there's less swelling, less pressure on the joints, overall better outcomes as well.
Right.
So, Buzz, let's get into a little bit of the anatomy of the leaky gut. I think we have some great illustrations here that we're going to have Tim work us through.
And to be clear, Tim, this is the large intestine, not the stomach, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
These are the junctions of your intestines, and they're supposed to be very tight, like they are you can see in the normal tight junctions. And what you have happening there is when there's inflammation, these tight junctions kind of open up, and there is a small, almost like a viscous layer. I've heard it been described by our microbiologists as almost like a thin sheet of Vaseline over your intestines. It's a mucosal layer. This is your added level of protection. But once you get these tight junctions opened up and the pathogens are starting to come through, they're actually destroying your mucosal layer. This also leads to different health issues. And the problem is, once your mucosal layer is gone, to get it back, once those junctions are open, is almost impossible. So it's, again, one thing stacking on another. As these open up and your mucosal layer is gone, then things are just going to slide right through in your bloodstream and be put past all over your body. And on the chart, you see the food allergens. One of the issues you'll have as people get older, my sister-in-law just went through it. She went tested and she had food sensitivities to surprise to no one, all of her favorite foods. Because as these food particles are getting through, they're being identified as your body as you should not eat this anymore. So if you have food sensitivities, it means I can almost guarantee you've got some type of leaky gut. And again, if you're going to a much more traditional doctor who gives you a hard time about leaky gut, use the term metabolic endotoxemia, because that seems to resonate a little more. Mm-hmm. I like saying it because it makes me sound smarter, but everybody knows that's not true. But yeah, the food allergens, it's very interesting how these two things are together. And again, we learn new stuff, it seems, every month about the microbiome. There's not as much clinical research in the US as is going on in the rest of the world, because they're ahead of us on how important they think the microbiome is. I mean, you talked about, we're learning more about it at the beginning of your talk. It goes back thousands of years in both China and Greece. They've called this the second brain for thousands of years. And now the rest of the world is just catching up, but we're scratching the surface. We don't really understand all of it yet.
For people listening out there too, if you're constipated, we've had people, Buzz, you hear the same thing. Just in the last couple of weeks, I've had people who told me they've been taking laxatives for the last 10 to 15 years just to be able to have some semblance of normalcy, gastroenteritis. And we put the people on these programs, and just for anatomy, if that waste, just because it doesn't leave the body physically, doesn't mean it doesn't leave the large intestine. Those waste particles move into the body. Again, one of the origins of autoimmune disease. And when you're trying to combat the symptom, the inflammation, but without addressing the cause, it's going to be perpetual. But the body will gradually weaken over time. But I think one of the great things about this is that this addresses several layers, or the components of the breakdown, where you mentioned that the junctions between the floors start to break down. The particles that should leave the body are entering into the blood system. Food pathogens that should leave the body are entering into the body. So the first thing that we want to do, and Tim, you can take us through this, is we want to get some good bacteria in there to combat the bad ones. We want to change the population of good to bad. There's always an overgrowth of these bad bacteria contributing to, as you mentioned, antibiotics and stress. But why is this product so effective in our practices? We always have people that come in and say, I've been taking probiotics, I don't really notice anything, just like Buzz said. Why has this one been so effective for us? And why is that the first component of restoring gut health?
Well, it's very different. There's a lot of mythology surrounding probiotics, especially in the United States. It was kind of what led our product to coming out. What the bacillin spores do is they do not go in and add to your microbiome. You will see ads for different products that say, we're going to send 100 billion CFUs, which I know this is something everybody sees. If you don't know what that is, that means colony forming unit. That means someone is going to tell you, these are the 3 or 4 things your microbiome needs for your overall health. And these are what's called keystone bacteria. Lacto, bifido are the 2 main ones that are in most products. we have taken a stance as our company, not saying these things can't potentially help you, but this is not what our product does. What our product does, I'm going to put this in very, very much again in layman's terms.
Please.
This is how Karan Krishman, who's our founder, very, very brilliant microbiologist, expressed it to me so I would understand. Think of your microbiome as a garden, and you have a lot of different things in your garden. Well, you have certain things that are overgrowing. When you get something that are overgrowing, it can stunt the growth of the things you want. So if you have a flower garden and you have 2 really pretty flowers you like, and the weeds are overgrowing it, it's going to stunt that growth. So what the bacillin spores do is they go in, they attack the pathogenic yeast and pathogenic bacteria 3 different ways. First, it crowds them out, occupies the same space. The second one it does, it eats the same food they eat. And the third one it does, it releases natural antibiotics and natural antioxidants, which in turn keys an immune response from your body saying, these are not supposed to be here, and reduces them in size, takes out these overgrowths. So when you do that, your keystone bacteria and your very lesser bacteria have a competitive advantage to get to back where you're supposed to be. You used to get these in nature. We don't get these in nature anymore. Our food is sterilized, our food is processed, we don't spend time outside, even things like walking around barefoot and things like that, eating fruits and vegetables that have dirt on them. These bacillin spores are passed on from organism to organism. These do not stay in your system. Bacillin bacteria is gut commensal. It's found in your body naturally, but the bacillin spores that you are taking, they are in spore form, a hard shell if you don't know what a spore is. It gets through your gastric system, it opens up, it colonizes, but in 21 days it passes through, goes back into spore form, and you pass it. In nature, for thousands of years, these are passed from organism to organism. You find bacillin bacteria in all living things. So it's part of the food chain, but we don't get it in our food chain anymore. And again, with everything that we do to ourselves with today's style of life, the stress, the lack of sleep, the alcohol, the bad food, so much stuff. The glyphosate that's in all of our soil is another factor, obviously. We don't get this anymore. So this is a true supplement for your health.
And is it fair to say too, because people will say, well, I take a probiotic or I eat yogurt, I know there's yogurt that has more in there. Is it fair to say if it's not spore based, there's no way it'll survive from the gut to the large intestine? Is that correct?
Now, I don't like to say there's no way, because in our testing, we've seen 90% don't survive. There is encapsulations that let it survive. Does it mean it's going to reproduce in the intestine? I don't know, because now there are some benefits. There are things, I don't know if you want to call it dead bacteria therapy or something like that. That can change your pH level and can reduce symptomology. Now, if somebody's taking a product and they said, I take this probiotic and it reduces my symptoms of bloating or gas, I see no issue with taking both products. If it's making someone feel better, it's okay. We don't want anybody to stop feeling better, because that's the first thing you want to do is feel a little better, feel a little more normal. But when it comes to changing your overall health, we believe in using scientific method to prove it, as opposed to just saying, we think it does this, we think it does this. That's why we do a lot of our clinical trials in hospitals, that we don't do the trials, they're done for us. And again, being clinicians, both of you know that once we hand our stuff over to a hospital, they're going to get the results they get. It doesn't matter. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So that's why a lot of companies do not do this, because the cost of it and the results, you just, until you see it, you don't know. But we are a company based in science, and we want to see what we're doing. Just like when we had our first clinical, it showed that people's triglycerides were dropping. So we did a trial about that, and we found out in over a couple month period, people's triglycerides dropped 20 points just by improving their gut health.
So, and circling back here, the reason why those triglycerides drop too is just the body is functioning better. So anatomy of the leaky gut, take everyone through it again. The junctions between the flora break. The flora opens up, and then the mucosal barrier disintegrates. So by taking this megaspore and titrating the dose up over a period of several weeks, you're populating a spore-based product into the gut, but it still faces challenges of survival, right? Because the bad bacteria are still growing and populating. How do you keep the good bacteria alive long enough to get a change, to get that mucosal layer to start reducing inflammation, actually start rebuilding? What's the next product?
The next product is our prebiotic.
And most people have never heard of a prebiotic before. Right, Buzz? Have you had the same? No one's
Yeah,
heard,
no
you
one's
don't
heard
see
that.
that advertised. Like probiotics are all over TV, refrigerated. Prebiotics is something I have to explain to patients all the time. So take us through that and what that does for the good probiotics.
It's a form of food for your good bacteria. One of the things that we saw, because when I first started with the company, we only had 5 products. And we had people like myself who did very well on Megaspore, but we wanted people to be able to take the next step. There were some people that reacted okay to it, but they weren't doing it well enough. So we said, you got to feed the good bacteria. Unfortunately, there were a lot of prebiotics out. It's basically oligosaccharides, which are starches that ferment and feed these bacteria. You get them in your diet, but you don't get enough of them. Ours is the first one we believe is targeted just to good bacteria, because a lot of the prebiotics on the market just fed everything. So if you have overgrowths and you feed into all of them, the overgrowths are also going to get bigger. So you need to feed the good bacteria. So we came up with a targeted prebiotic, which in turn is an addition to your regular diet, eating healthy, eating clean, but it just gives you a boost to feed the good bacteria and strengthen it. In turn, strengthening your immune system, creating diversity. Because if you can provide the right oligosaccharides, a lot of these bacteria that when we do our testing are very, very low in your system, you're feeding them and they start to reproduce, they start to proliferate, and you start getting the health benefits. Because again, everything in your microbiome is there for a reason. Even the bad stuff to balance stuff out. Think of it like the Everglades. You might not want to see alligators in the Everglades, but they're there for a reason. So you just don't want them too much. You don't want them to tip the scales. You need a balance. But if you get feeding into the good bacteria I don't think there's any other way to put it. It just improves your overall health. I mean, it improves it so much. Because again, in most people's diets, they're not going to get everything you need. You might get a lot, but you need that little extra boost.
And when you maintain that good health for a long enough period of time, those junctions begin to close, right? You're reestablishing the junction, and probably the most important part of I won't say the most important part, equally as important is the end result, where you're separating your immune system from the outside world, where you're rebuilding that mucosal barrier, and the final part of the product is the mega mucosa.
The mega mucosa, yes. This is a very unique product to us. It's a combination of 4 amino acids and bovine IgG. The amino acids have been shown, and again, I'm very specific about this. We do tests, we do all kinds of clinical trials. The clinical trials with the amino acids have only been done in mice, but they've been extremely effective, 95%, and we've had great results from it. It basically will help regrow your mucosal layer. There's several products people use out there, but they turn out to be a little bit more like a patch. There's not much in your diet you can use to help grow that. Well, it's a unique combination, because when you use those amino acids with the IgG, what the IgG's job does, it is a binder to toxins. So it will actually grab a toxin and bulk it so big it cannot pass through the tight junctions. So that does give while it's being repaired, it allows it time to repair. These things are not going to be busting through and breaking it up. So this is a very good product. It's a 3-step thing with the Megaspore, the prebiotic, and the mucosa. It's our total gut restoration. But if you have any type of autoimmune, this is the way to go, because I will guarantee you that if you're having issues like that, your mucosal layer is gone. It's not coming back because you're continuing to do this. The marriage between the amino acids and the IgG was perfect for us. It was almost like a karmic thing. We had the ability to get this IgG. Another company had represented for a long, long time. The product's been around for, my goodness, the product's been around for over 60 years, has 90 clinical trials written about it, papers written about it. They've never had an adverse event. It's never hurt anyone, which should go without saying, but something that's been around that long, I find very impressive that it's never had a bad effect. The one question we have is that, okay, this thing in nature grabs grabs the toxins. What if there's no toxins to grab? What does it do? Will it get into my bloodstream? Will it have an effect? Absolutely not. One of the coolest things about this product is that if it doesn't have the toxin to grab, it dissolves into a simple protein and you absorb it. So you're never going to go wrong with the IgG. We absolutely love it. I love it for my own arthritis. If I get a small flare up, it really kind of takes me out of it because it's so good to reduce inflammation. If you have IBS, it's a great thing to use. We're just kind of scratching the surface on what this can do for us. We're doing a bunch more research on it. But this has, again, been around, and the people who developed this years ago was actually developed for, I want to make sure I get this right. Apparently, pigs are not born with an immune system. They have to get it from their mother. So on hog farms, they were having a problem with a lot of pigs dying. So they put out this thing, they were offering this huge prize, and the people who dealt with cows said, hey, there's this great thing. So they started spraying it into the hog pens 60 years ago. And the death rate for all these little pigs dropped so drastically, they started researching it for human beings. And the people who did the research and introduced it to humans actually won the Nobel Prize for Chemistry that year.
Wow, amazing.
So it's a very, 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 very cool product. We love it. We're very fortunate to have had it at a higher dose. It is a pharmaceutic at a 5-gram dose. We do it at a 2-gram, but it's the same product.
And Tim, protocol-wise, the entirety of the gut restoration takes about 3 months.
About 3 months.
And recommended people do this every 6 months.
I would say about every year. Here's the other part that kind of separates us from some of these other companies out there. I don't want to ever give you something and say, okay, take this for the rest of your life. This is not, to me, sometimes with companies that seems like a money grab. Obviously I'm a sales rep, I'm a salesman at heart, but I don't work that way. Once you do the 3-month protocol, if you do a maintenance dose of the mucosa and the prebiotic once a week, maybe twice a week if it makes you feel good, you don't have to do this every day. And even with the Megaspore, for people who are just looking for a little better health, you can even do a maintenance dose with that. Now, someone who suffers like me, I would never think of not taking it every day because an issue with my microbiome equals pain to me. So I don't want to risk it. But this is something you can do once a year to really boost your immune system, make sure you're cleaned up, because we're all going to do things that can affect our microbiome. We're going to go through times of stress. You're going to go on vacation, eat terrible food. You're going to get sick and have to take an antibiotic. And, I'm not against any antibiotics at all. Antibiotics have a great purpose. They can save your life. But the after effect of an antibiotic can be harmful. It's not always, I'm not saying that, but it can be harmful even in small ways with overgrowth. So this is one of the few products you can actually take while you're taking an antibiotic. The antibiotic will not destroy the bacillus and bacteria. They will stay in spore form until, for lack of a better term, the coast is clear. And they will come out and they'll do their job. Because again, I will hand this off more to the two docs. There are some devastating things that can happen to people from prolonged antibiotic use. And it's really not talked about that much. I understand why, but to me, cause and effect with C. diff. You can absolutely get C. diff from taking high dose antibiotics for a long time, and that's a very serious thing.
Yeah, and it goes on and on. Whether you're talking about the side effects from long-term antibiotic, opioid-induced constipation. There's so many factors why gut health is so important, and we're going to have you back again, Tim, to talk more about these things in the past. But you've given us so much great information, and the protocol is easy and simple to follow. When you click on our link below, BUCKEYE PMR, APMR Miami, you'll be able to get a link, go right into our store and pick this product up, or at least get more information about it. Buzz, wrapping up, you had mentioned earlier it's integral. It's one of the components of your overall baseline vitamins that you prescribe your patients: CoQ10, fish oils, vitamin D3, obviously. You use it in your weight loss patients, your hormone patients as well, correct?
Correct. And we even see the weight loss patients. A lot of the weight loss patients obviously have had poor eating habits over time. And also, I don't know the exact mechanism. Maybe Tim, you would know. it seems like it helps with, curb the appetite a little bit too. And I've heard maybe it has something to do with ghrelin. I'm not sure the exact mechanism, but it seems like when you fix that microbiome, it actually improves the connection maybe between the brain and the gut, and helps with even appetite suppression to some degree.
There's definitely the brain gut connection. Now, I think how it can help people is a lot of times the megaspore can start helping you get rid of the candida, which is the one that actually cries out for the sugars and all that other stuff. We definitely.
So many people that are obese are just starved all the time. They, and it's just, their bodies are messed up, from all the poor eating over time. And that's why the majority of diets don't work out, because they're not addressing these problems.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. You gotta fix it. You gotta fix it and go from there.
Yep. And it all ties together. Good gut health, insulin resistance, reversing, correcting that, balancing out the hormones, taking stress off the weight-bearing joints. The whole idea is healthy function. We're with these types of tools available to us, longevity is the key. And I know, for example, Buzz, when I look at my labs in particular, the ability of the body to eliminate, I look at that. I also look at especially like kidney health, filtration rate, glomerular filtration rate as some of the biggest predictors of longevity, along with whether or not the person is insulin resistant. There's so much information to bring the patients. Our job is to give you a healthy dose, to educate you week in, week out, make more tools available to you, share some information. We're always going to bring you the latest, most cutting edge products. Again, I encourage all of our listeners, check out Microbiome Labs, and especially this gut health protocol. We're gonna be back next week. We're definitely gonna have you back, Tim. Thank you for being with us.
My pleasure.
And we'll see you next time. Dr. Joe and Dr. Buzz signing out. See you, Buzz.
See ya.
Thank you for joining us. This has been your Healthy Dose. If you enjoyed today's show, hit that like and subscribe button before you go. We appreciate your support. For more information, recaps on previous episodes, and to find out what's next, follow us on Instagram at Healthy Dose Show. Remember, repair, replace, and regenerate. See you next time.